Hello, this is Maria Kanellis Bennett, and I am the First Lady of Professional Wrestling, and you're listening to the Wrestling Epicenter.
The following announcement has been paid for by the Wrestling Epicenter.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, guys.
Hello, ladies. Remember me? Let me talk to you, dummies.
It's now time
It's theater time. TikTok.
It's showtime!
for the longest running wrestling talk show in history.
We are huge. It's gonna be cool.
You're where it's at.
You smell like me.
Tune in each and every week.
And you better keep listening, or I'll come out of your computer
And turn it on for you.
or else I'm gonna kick your stinking tape in.
We've been known by a few names.
The needs of the many far outweigh the needs of the few.
The Interactive Interview,
Interactive interview. Oh, yeah.
Interactive interview.
The interactive interview. Interactive interview. The interactive interview.
Interactive Wrestling Radio,
Interactive wrestling radio.
Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Interactive radio. Interactive wrestling radio. Interactive wrestling radio.
The Blaze,
Blaze 1260 AM. The Blaze.
The Blaze.
Blaze. The Blaze Rock.
and a lot of other names.
Weekend Warrior of Wrestling. The Pile Driver. The Epa Wrestling Center.
3 Count Wrestling.
The Hours Slam.
But it's all one show, the Wrestling Epicenter.
Wrestling Epicenter. The Wrestling Epicenter.
The Epicenter.
Wrestling Epicenter, dude. The Wrestling Epicenter. Don't get off.
And your host from day one,
By ignorance or arrogance.
James Walsh.
Wake up, sleepyheads.
Dr. Carol House.
It all starts
What a rush. Oh, Boomer Sooner.
Thank you very much.
I got 2 words for you. Thumbs down. Breaking necks and cashing checks. Burn. I've heard a lot about you guys.
Check it out. Get out of my face. You win!
But I'm desperately out of time.
So what you gonna do when Blaze-a-mania runs wild on you?
now.
And welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio. Joining us on the Newsmaker line is a young lady who just re-signed with Ring of Honor Wrestling. She is the First Lady of Wrestling. I have to ask her about that later on as well, that nickname. She is Maria Kanellis Bennett. Are you with me, ma'am?
I am.
It's a pleasure to have you on. I've never had you on before, and I've been doing this a long, long time.
Well, thank you very much.
All right, so let's start out with the hot topic, which is re-signing with Ring of Honor. What made this the right time to ink the paper?
So with being fired last year, I was only 2 months postpartum after having my son, and with the pandemic and everything, we kind of took a step back and said that Mike was going to start getting back out there and working at some point, and we didn't really know what was going to happen with the pandemic. So I took a step back from everything, and then when the time was right, Ring of Honor brought a fantastic opportunity to me, and that was to head up the women's division. And I, at this point in my career, really want to give back to women's wrestlers. And this was just the right opportunity.
Absolutely. And I have a lot of questions about the Women of Honor division that we can talk about in just a moment. But let's do a little bit of chronological because I'm retentive in that way. Do you mind if I ask you a couple of career questions? And then, of course, we'll come back to Ring of Honor.
Not at all.
All right. So when you signed up for the Diva Search, did you have any idea that 17 years later you'd still be doing things in the world of wrestling?
No, at that point, I probably thought I would be like an old lady in a wheelchair or something. For some reason, when you're in your 20s, you think that 30 is incredibly old. I thought I would have been done by 30. Retired in some mansion in Los Angeles or some, crazy dream that I had at 22. No, I came in thinking this is incredible. And then it just kept becoming even more incredible.
Were you, and I don't want to do the typical, were you a wrestling fan growing up kind of question, but when I watched the Diva Search, obviously not all of those girls knew wrestling. Some did, but not all of them did. Were you somebody that knew the history of wrestling, or was this kind of like a brave new world for you?
History to a certain point, but I was a fan of everybody. The thing that got me pushed to the next round was calling Jonathan Coachman a popcorn fart. And that was in Chicago. I think there was about 200, maybe 250 girls there that were competing to make it to New York. And so Jonathan Coachman was one of the judges at that point. And they asked me, who's your favorite wrestler? And I said, The Rock. And I was like, Jonathan Coachman, you know The Rock. He called you a popcorn fart last week. And so instantly Coachman said, go to the next round. And yes, I knew everybody at that point. I was definitely a fangirl backstage, just in awe of everybody.
See, it's funny you mentioned Jonathan Coachman, because when I interviewed him to promote a Raw that was happening in Arizona in 2005, your name came up, and he basically said that you weren't so bright. Obviously, talking about your on-screen persona, because as we all can tell, that's not the case for who you really are. That was kind of my next question. Did you regret that persona, that people really got the impression that there wasn't a very big light under the hood?
So I wonder if they asked the same question of Lucille Ball. I think that's the difference between wrestling and everything else, is people take it so incredibly literal that we forget that in order to make a character believable, there has to be a reasoning in the mind. You can't just become a character out of nowhere and not make it ridiculous if you aren't considering what you're doing. So, Lucille Ball or any of these fantastic comedic actors and actresses, they wouldn't ask that question of them. So, no, I never regret it. I got to work with everybody. I got to be a fly on the wall in so many incredible storylines, watching matches by the side of the ring, listening to people like Undertaker and Triple H and Randy Orton calling matches while they're in the ring. Listening to how DX puts together a promo before we cut it for live television, or and listening to Ric Flair going through his lines, or Edge, or, I got to work with everybody, and not a lot of people can say that because of that character. I was non-threatening, and that made all the difference in the world.
Absolutely. And another thing I see you debate a lot online is the word diva. And as a guy, maybe I have a different perspective on it, but I don't find it offensive the way that some of the younger folks seem to find it offensive. I guess, has your opinion changed at all, or do you still think that that era of diva deserves more respect than it gets? Because it certainly does.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most powerful women that has came out of wrestling is Maurice. She has her own production company. She has a skincare line. She's got a television show. She is probably one of the most well-known women in any industry. So she was a diva, and she came into the diva search with all of her knowledge of being a model, and she brought that knowledge into wrestling. There isn't enough crossover between wrestling and the outside world, and she was able to create that because of her connections with the outside world, with the beauty world, with the modeling world. So I find it incredibly disrespectful that people don't give respect to the divas. And not only were there models that became wrestlers, but there was also wrestlers that became better wrestlers on television. Beth Phoenix and Mickie James and Natalya was in that era, and Alicia Fox, who broke barriers before certain barriers hadn't been broken before. So there were incredible divas that were incredible wrestlers. Just didn't have the time on television.
Very cool. Now, when your WWE time came to an end and you went to the independent circuit, was it a bit of a culture shock to see, the lights, the billion-dollar trucks and all the things that they had versus what you saw on the independent circuit? So when I left WWE, I was amazed by how
the crowd sounded when you went into a crowd that was one of 200 people, because it felt so intimate and so powerful, and I loved that energy of the independents. I felt free in a lot of ways to be as creative as I wanted to, and try new things. So that was amazing. I didn't sign anywhere for about almost 2 years after WWE, because I was getting that freedom and just seeing if I really wanted to stay in the wrestling business or if I wanted to do something else.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when you were on the independent scene, and of course in Ring of Honor, you met your husband, who I interviewed on January the 6th, and perhaps because of craziness in the world that happened that day, that interview did okay, but didn't do as well as I had hoped, because I thought it was really awesome. But you guys are one of the more cool couples in wrestling, and you guys really seem to just be totally simpatico. I guess, how did you guys come to be a couple?
So I met him at a Northeast wrestling show, and he was eating cold pizza at the time and wearing a Ring of Honor hat. And I thought to myself, well, he's cute. And that was pretty much it. I was dating someone. He was dating someone. We all went out to dinner after. He was eating cheese sticks with a knife and a fork. I thought that was odd. So I called him out on it. He was like, I was trying to be polite. I was like, that's weird. And then a few months after that, he and I were both single. He contacted me on Twitter through direct message, and then we went on our first date, to which he had to drive 9 hours to see me. So, ever since then, we've been together. This June, it will be 10 years.
That's incredible. That's awesome. And one of the cool things you got to do together was you broke barriers. You used the phrase break barriers just a minute ago in New Japan Pro Wrestling. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't paying too much attention to New Japan, but when your name came up there, it really stood out because women just weren't done. That's just not something that New Japan did. How big was that for your legacy in wrestling to have done what you did with New Japan?
They were so incredibly respectful of me over there. I was treated so well. And to be over there and to have those moments with that crowd, I mean, it'll stick with me for the rest of my life. I'm hoping that we get to do it at least one more time. I figure since Wrestle Kingdom is named after the kingdom, at least I say it is, we should do it at least once. And that's something I'm definitely, I'm hoping and praying for, is to do Wrestle Kingdom in January of next year, bring the two kids along with us, and, just be back in that atmosphere. I mean, those wrestlers are incredible, and they were so kind to us. I know, like, after me, there has been more women that have gone over, and I'm hoping even more women will be able to perform for New Japan.
Absolutely. And you already mentioned the Kingdom, but you guys really made Ring of Honor home. Yourself and Mike Bennett and Matt Taven, and Ring of Honor, just, it seemed to be like watching it to see the Kingdom for a little while there. What made Ring of Honor so the place to sink your teeth in, like it was back in 2014-15?
There was just so many good tag teams. I mean, you had the Briscoes, you had the Bullet Club showing up, you had Carl and Doc that came in with New Japan a couple of times, you had Bobby and Kyle, it was just like, there was constantly like a flood of different tag teams. And the tag team division was so strong at that time.
Very cool, very cool. Now, this is a strange one that I wrote down, and kind of like a thought that I had. I got the impression when you guys were with Impact Wrestling that you were very much on the Billy Corgan divide. You guys were on his side of that. That's just the way it came off from an outsider looking in. So I was surprised when you guys decided to go to WWE at that point. Did I read that right? Were you guys kind of like on Billy Corgan's side of the Impact split?
So One of the first people that has texted me every time, like I've announced that I was having a baby or when we were released, or has been Dixie. She is a sweetheart, and she, she loves the wrestlers that have been in the company. There have been difficulties in business. That was always the struggle. It wasn't Dixie as a person, it was the business of it. I also love Billy. I loved his creative side. I loved the interactions we had on television. And, Mike had his match with Nick Aldis for NWA, so in UPW. So we love them both in different ways, which I think is a more honest answer than just saying I was on one side or the other. Loved Dixie as a person, loved Billy Corgan's business side. And, when we left there, it wasn't because of any of that. When we left there, it was because WWE was offering us more money, which is what I wanted. And it was Mike's dream. So Mike's dream was to be a WWE superstar. And so we needed to go. Was I totally on board with it? I don't know. I think I was just going because it's money, and I like money. So, I think Carlito said that recently. I like money.
He did.
I think everybody just, you want to pay your bills. So that's what I wanted to do. And for Mike, it was about the dream.
Very cool, very cool. So what does it mean to you to be the first pregnant champion in WWE history?
Amazing. So cool. My son is the first fetus champion. Like this, it's hilarious. It's amazing. I get to sign those until I'm 80 years old. I will sign 24/7 titles, the green belt forever. It's amazing. I've had a lot of pregnant women and moms come up to me and say, thank you for the inspiration. No, I'm not, I'm not disabled because I'm pregnant. I'm just pregnant. And so it meant a lot to the women watching WWE. And to me, that's the most important part. To have an effect on someone when they're feeling raw emotions of feeling less than because they're pregnant or because they're a mom. If I can give them a little bit of inspiration or a little bit of joy or laughter, that's all that this is about.
Absolutely. And I don't want to hit you with hard questions. I'm not a hard copy kind of guy. My question would be here. You mentioned pregnancy, and I remember when Becky Lynch was basically the face of the company and got pregnant, I was reading people online and they're almost treating it like it was an injury. Like she opted to get injured. And it's like, no, she's living her life. But what do you think of that aspect of as women become more involved and more a part of the overall business structure of wrestling, the pregnancy and the fact that, they also want a life and a family, does that detract from women, or how does that affect the women's role in wrestling?
So I'm curious about this when it comes to fans, because I think that fans think that they have a lot more influence on our lives than they do. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I'm curious that if they would pose the same question to, I don't know, Vince McMahon, because he has 2 kids. Would you pose that question to him? Would you ask him, oh, well, do you think you should be having children because you own a $1 billion company? Maybe he shouldn't have kids. How about Triple H? He has 3 beautiful daughters. Would you ask the question of him? I mean, he didn't have to take off any time or lose any part of his career because of having kids, but maybe we should insult him. Or how about Seth? I mean, if people are going to jump all over Becky, shouldn't they also jump all over Seth? Or how about any other male in this industry? Like, come on, grow up, people. It takes 2 to tango. And just because I've had a couple of babies doesn't mean that I can't think for myself or hold a career. Women do it every single day. They are working as waitresses. They work at hotels. They work at major corporations. They own billion-dollar businesses. No, wrestling is no different. Yes, we go away. All right, bye, peace out. I was gone for 6 months. I come back. I do my job again. Isn't that what it's about? I mean, if women did not have babies, there would be no humans. So maybe that should be the big question. Yes, I am not going to stop my life because some man or some woman, I guess, too, gets online and says, oh, well, you shouldn't have kids. Why? Are you going to be there when I'm 90 years old? Are you going to be my memory? Are you going to be my daughter or my grandchild that is pushing me around in my wheelchair? No, my kids will. My grandbabies will. So unless some fan wants to commit his life to being the joy of my life, maybe we should rethink things a little bit. It's having a baby. It's a great joy. It's not the end of the world. I think we need to rethink things a little bit. And no, Becky did not ruin her career or her life. She made her life and her career better. I run a women's division now.
Right.
And these women I look at are all my children. They make me better as a mother, and being a mother makes me better at my job because everything has more meaning when you have kids.
Beautiful, beautiful. And we'll talk a little bit about Ring of Honor now. And I have to ask you about that First Lady thing before we hang up. Don't let me forget.
Oh, sure.
But Ring of Honor, you guys are getting ready to start up the women's division again after the hiatus. But then again, to be fair, the whole company was on hiatus due to the pandemic a little bit. I guess what can we expect from the Women of Honor division when it gets going in full swing again? So
for the tournament, as much attention is going to be given to the women's tournament as was given to the pure tournament. So it's going to be a lot of what you're seeing on Ring of Honor television. This title is very important to the women that have been here and thought that there was going to be a tournament last year. And so it is incredibly important to me to give it just as much attention. In the ramp up, we have an totally exclusive show on YouTube that's called Women's Division Wednesday. New matches, new faces, new promos, new interviews, and it is going to ramp up towards the tournament. And I think what you can see is the best of the best in the United States. Hopefully we will get to around the world when things open back up. And, you know, just focusing on women's wrestling as a sport and as a athletic capability is going to be the number one thing.
Very good. I know you got Angelina Love under contract, Mandy Leon. Anybody else that we can expect to see in the division that we might not already know about?
I can't tell you, but we know who we're looking at. We know who we're interested in. In the coming weeks, you will definitely start seeing announcements.
Very good. I noticed you said women's division and not Women of Honor, and I said Women of Honor. Are we getting away from the phrase Women of Honor, or is it just a semantics thing?
It's a new title. So it's representing the women's division. It's not a Women of Honor title. It's a women's division title. So that's how we're going forward with it. It's a brand new thing.
Sounds good. And, of course, recently you've been running the Ring of Honor Experience on Facebook, and that's been pretty cool. Every time I log in, I get like 6 updates from people posting, so it's definitely keeping my attention on Ring of Honor. But how has that experience been handling the social media aspect for Ring of Honor?
It's been great. You know, there's an entire team now in Ring of Honor that handle the social media aspect of it. Which is so incredibly important to pay attention to what's going on out there, because that's what Ring of Honor has always done. It's paid attention to fans. And now that we can't have fans inside the building, now we're trying to give them an experience online. And it's really exciting for the fans to feel like they have a say, because they do have a say, because the things that they ask for end up on television. And I know moving forward in this tournament, one of the women so far was pulled exclusively from the fan experience.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah.
That's incredible. All right, so I'm going to say this now before I forget because it's past my notes. The First Lady of Wrestling. And when I think of that name, I think of three people. You're one of them, but there's two others. There's Miss Elizabeth and of course, Missy Hyatt. I've been doing this a long time. When you first started using it, I remember Missy Hyatt said, I might have to contact my lawyer about that one. Do you still go by the First Lady of Wrestling?
I do, because people like it. As many people as come after me, oh, well, the First Lady is this, and the First Lady. I wonder if they go after the First Lady, the President. And like, it's just, it's a moniker that's been used, and it. I don't know exactly how it came about, but I love it because people get such a visceral reaction from it. And it also, too, it plays on the fact that I've managed so many different people along the way.
I love it.
And it's also like a huge like nod to Miss Elizabeth, who I find incredible. She's one of the original diva type managers.
Absolutely. I never got to interview her. She was on like a short list on a piece of paper when I started this in 2002, and unfortunately didn't have a lot of time before she passed away. But I did get to meet her, so that was pretty cool. So there. Okay, so a couple more questions, and I promise I will let you go because I know you got a busy day.
That's okay.
What I love about you is you guys are not afraid to say what's on your mind, pretty much regardless how it's going to be perceived. And that was especially true when WWE released you and you guys kind of came out throwing, I used a phrase with your husband, I said kind of throwing bombs. You guys were kind of really going out there and saying what you thought as opposed to being more of a reserved approach. Is that a blessing or a curse?
I've always spoke my mind, so I wouldn't know any different. I just, here's what I know about WWE. They have the biggest voice of them all when it comes to professional wrestling. They control the narrative, as to use one of EC3's line. Yep. And they can, because they have relationships with a lot of media and media that is also under contract to them. So it's difficult to get your message out there unless you're incredibly forceful. And we did that. I did that last year. I've moved on from it again, like I did back in 2010. I left. I did all the interviews. I said all the things, and then that was enough. And I feel the same way this time around as well. Do I feel like what they did was necessary last year and this year? No, I don't think they needed to release anybody. Mm-hmm. Am I glad they did with us? Yes, I am. I got to spend an entire year with my son. I didn't have to go for work. Yes, we were concerned about the pandemic and COVID and whether we were going to be able to pay our bills in a year, but I also got time with my children and made decisions about what I really wanted about my career moving forward. And so I'm so incredibly blessed. I thank God every day for how things turned out. I appreciate Ring of Honor reaching out when they did and how they did with both of us. And I feel like this is going to be the best part of our lives.
Awesome. Any desire to get back out there and get in the corner of your husband and take him to the ring and maybe even, dare I say, wrestle again?
So wrestle, no. Just because it doesn't fit with my job currently. I want to be on the board of directors. I don't want to be in the tournament. It's important to help the new girls and watch them succeed and watch their careers blossom. So I don't want to be in the mix because that just muddies the water. And for Mike, of course, I mean, I'm sure at some point I'll manage him again. I'm sure the Kingdom will be all back together again at some point because that is separate from the women's division and I can keep it separate in that way.
I know I asked Mike Bennett this, but I'll ask you this too. What do you think of how Matt Taven has come into his own since you guys left at the end of 2015?
Oh gosh, Matt is a main eventer now on his own. He is incredibly intense. He's taken all of that passion, that creativity, that love for wrestling and put it into his craft, and you can really see that in the ring. When he won the world championship, we all were like so excited, and I was just like, it's like almost in tears because he's like, I don't know, he's like my brother, you know. I just I adore him, and I'm so proud of what he's become, and I can't wait to see what happens next, because I think Mike is on one path and Taven is on another, and then they're on this other path together. It's just really cool to see.
Very cool, very cool. I will let you go. This will be kind of my last question. Unfortunately, I kind of went out of order in my own notes, but I guess my question would be, what advice do you have for those folks that just went through what you went through just over a year ago, that just got their walk-in papers? What advice do you have for those folks?
Know that there's always hope. There is freedom and there is potential in the independent scene, in other companies. It is incredibly difficult to see when you're in the mix of it, but eventually you get to the point where you appreciate what you did in WWE and you appreciate what that company has given you, but you also start to appreciate yourself and what you were able to accomplish on your own, and then see what you can do in the future. And that's the best part of it, is when things start to turn around. I've had it happen twice now. And the second time was scarier than the first because of the two babies. And I know some of the people that were recently released have kids. And that just makes everything more intense, but you'll be okay. Take it a day at a time, and those calls will start coming back in. Those emails will start happening, those text messages, and you are talented. No matter what people told you before, you'll be okay.
Beautiful. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time. I hope I wasn't too hard-hitting with my line of questioning.
No, you're fine. No, it's what everybody asks.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to getting pregnant, when it comes to having a family in this business, this is what everybody asks. There's two sides to it. There's the fans that love it because they want the diversity. They want the inclusion of women and of moms and of everybody. And then there's the other side that is negative, and they want to be smart about the business. They don't want to be entertained. They want to be tell everybody how awful the world is.
That's true.
I don't understand. When I follow people, when I tweet people, when I am a person that, like, when I post something, I pay attention to the things I love. I try not to pay attention to the things that I don't pay attention to. Individuals I hate would be the biggest part of it. Like, I look bigger picture of what things are happening in the world. So, yeah, I think maybe, that's the questions that people want to know.
Exactly. And it's a intelligence thing. I think people think by sounding negative that somehow, oh, well, this guy must be really smart because he hates everything. And it's like, that's just not how the world works. But okay.
No, and there is no black, there is no white. There's shades of gray when it comes to, and there is no 100% right and 100% wrong. It's somewhere in the middle. Everybody is somewhere in the middle. There's no, I don't agree with this idea that, that because you've seen a little snippet of a person's life on the internet or on a TV show that you understand the entirety of that person and their soul. So, like, that it doesn't make any sense.
All right. Well, hey, before I let you go, do you mind if I ask for one last favor? You probably already know what it'll be. Do you mind if I ask for a station ID? Just saying this is Maria Kanellis Bennett, and you're listening to the Wrestling Epicenter.
Wrestling Epicenter. Got it. Ready?
Yeah, do you want me to do the Waynesboro countdown thing?
It's okay. I can go.
All right.
What was it? What was it again? I'm sorry.
Wrestling Epicenter.
Wrestling Epicenter. Okay. Hello, this is Maria Kanellis Bennett, and I am the First Lady of Professional Wrestling, and you're listening to the Wrestling Epicenter.
That's awesome. And I love that you threw in the First Lady of Wrestling. That's awesome.
I do every time. It's ridiculous. It just, people have a reaction to it, and that's what I want.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much. I hope that didn't take too much of your time, and thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
The preceding announcement was paid for by the Wrestling Epicenter.
I'm to listen, and if you like what you heard, I'm glad. If you didn't like what you heard, well, go fuck yourself.
Most people don't hung up on me.
We had a lovely conversation.
What a show.
Oh, mercy, Daddy.
On your radio dial. Don't hang up. Bye-bye.